Well, we do have a developing tropical storm, maybe even typhoon threat for the Philippines right now. Here is Invest 94W. It's a lovely, juicy looking low pressure area in the Philippine Sea. It's starting to get its act together. It's got some very nice convection, I must say. And I honestly would not be surprised if this is designated as a tropical storm BSAG, in the next few days or so. That's the forecast anyway. It is shaping up to be quite a juicy storm for the Philippine Sea. Category 5 by the GFS, Category 5 by the ECMWF, and Category 4 by the CMC. So models are very, very confident that we're going to be getting a very strong April typhoon. Not too uncommon in the Western Pacific, but still quite extraordinary. Well, here's where the storm is located right now. We've got typhoon and tropical storm conditions possible. That's the overlay. And then the two red lines are the likely tracks this storm could take. Now, there is a trough that is up in the more northern parts of the Western Pacific or around Japan. Now, that's likely to form in the next few days. If that does form and intensifies into a certain size trough, we're going to be seeing this storm pull a recurve, which is the good news. It is likely to form, and the Philippines likely won't be affected too bad by this storm. But the bad news is if this trough doesn't form, which the CMC is sort of on board with, or has been on board with for a few model runs, we're going to see a big storm landfall on the Philippines to the likes of something like Goni of 2020. So very, very powerful indeed. Could be anywhere stronger than Category 3 status, maybe even up to Category 5. The conditions are certainly there. Typhoon conditions over the next 10 days are possible in most of the Philippine Sea, with tropical storm conditions possible right up until the Philippines coastline and then over to the Northern Mariana Islands. So very, very widespread significant storm conditions possible. There is a lot of uncertainty with this storm as it is right now. Here's the GFS ensemble. Now, this is a scary graph indeed. I don't think anyone's ever seen something like this for the GFS in April. This is very unusual activity for the GFS indeed, especially since it is renowned to underestimate wind speeds. But we can see widespread areas of 100 knots in those track graphs. In fact, find me a track line that doesn't have 100 knots at the end of it after the sort of 6-7 day mark. So very powerful typhoon expected, still a little bit long range, so we might see some change. The good news is it mostly stays away from the Philippines, although there are some track ensembles that do take it a little bit too close for comfort to the Philippines. It's more so going to be the southern areas which could see typhoon conditions, but Catanduanes is still a very exposed place, could see typhoon conditions for a few hours if this storm does track close to the Philippines. So we're waiting on that trough. If that trough develops, we're going to see a recurve storm. If that trough fails to develop, we're going to see something that goes into the Philippines and splat. All hell will break loose if that does happen. The storm risks as it stands right now: Category 3 winds likely over much of the Philippine Sea, typhoon winds likely over again much of the Philippine Sea, but extending a little bit too close to land for comfort, and tropical storm winds over a bit of the Philippines, especially Catanduanes being very exposed to those nor'westers. So we could be seeing some strong winds for a short period of time on the eastern Philippines coast if this storm does track a little bit too close to the Philippines than what we are expecting. Significant waves are a very high likelihood, however, for Guam and also for the Philippines area, especially the central and the southern Luzon area. Catanduanes could see waves up to 4 meters high if this storm does track around 200 miles offshore. Very significant wave heights indeed over much of the Philippine Sea. Thankfully, however, rainfall tends to stay well offshore. That could have been the biggest risk, but it doesn't look like we're going to be seeing significant rainfall totals over in a very short period of time over the Philippines. So flooding is not too likely at this stage, although we cannot be writing it off as of now. Summing all of this information up, we finish off with a storm track. This is a GFS and my track consensus. So quite a weak storm for the next 5 days, tropical depression to tropical storm. Then it starts organising itself, and it's meant to do it nice and slowly, getting everything right, finding its Goldilocks zone. And when it finds it, bang! This storm is expected to become a very powerful typhoon indeed. Thankfully, not too close to land, but we know how far models can swing, so we can't be writing off a Philippine landfall at a very high intensity indeed. Category 5 after 7 days, Category 5 still right up until the end of the forecast, so very powerful and very fast intensification is expected. Would I say record intensification? Not at this stage. There is still uncertainty past the 5-day forecast period, but most models have this thing developing and at least reaching Category 2 status. So we're confident in a strong storm. We're not confident with where this storm is going to go. That's the headline. But the grey shaded area is where the storm could go. So if you do find yourself in that area, I'd start watching the models very, very closely. So Catanduanes is under that area, and parts of central Philippines and the northern parts of Luzon could see this typhoon track directly over them, which means quite a proportion of the Philippines could see tropical storm winds over the next 10 days or so. The Northern Mariana Islands are likely to receive gale force winds, but the storm isn't likely to affect them yet. Thankfully though, the GFS has backed down its intensity slightly from yesterday, but we're still expecting a 920 millibar Category 5 on that front. The GFS is renowned to be an underestimator. I can't wait to see what the HWRF says on this storm. It's going to be something ridiculously stupid, and I'll be sure to bring you that news tomorrow. Take a look at that satellite imagery again, looking very sweet indeed. It's got that huge band that's sort of carving in. I'm not sure if that's inflow or outflow. It looks very inflow, but that outflow band is in that southwestern quadrant, and it does look pretty sweet indeed. Very good convection in that area. Very good thunderstorms have been bubbling up, and there is a distinct centre indeed. If this storm had a very nice CDO and was a Category 5 right now, I must say it would look a lot like Haiyan of 2013. Still, it's got plenty of time to organise itself. Conditions are right. The maximum potential energy is 180 knots. So this storm has pretty much nothing in its way. So provided this storm doesn't hit land, we could be seeing something very, very powerful indeed. And hopefully not something tragic, so I might enjoy tracking this storm for once. Anyways, if you do like fish storms, make sure to leave a like and subscribe so you can stay up to date on this storm. If you do live in the Philippines, I recommend watching the models very closely, and if the storm is forecast to make a landfall on you, make sure to get your supplies ready early. Anyways, if you did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to this channel for future green screen updates, and make sure to subscribe to the main channel for graphical updates on this storm if it does form. Anyways, that's all from me, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.